afternoon, everybody. I am Mponeng Seshea, co-founder and managing director at Imizizi and Imizizi Evolution. Today is our very first podcast of Imizizi Evolution. We're very excited. Let me tell you a little bit about Imizizi Evolution first. Imizizi Evolution is a venture building company based in South Africa, in Johannesburg, South Africa. We aim to develop businesses that are innovative and disruptive in the necessities, products and services, and we want to then financially back these women-owned businesses. So then, 1956 podcast is a platform that we are then using to be able to interact, to engage, to collaborate more on these topics. Obviously, the focus will be the VC industry, the venture building and venture capital industry, diversity and inclusion, and business development. Today, I am with Serena DAVIS. I will let her introduce herself just in a minute. Our topic is how can VCs be better anchors to small businesses? Serena, thank you so much for joining us. It is such a pleasure to have you today. I know you're traveling, and I appreciate you making the time to be with us today. How are you?
I'm well. I love spending time with you, so I will always make time for you.
Thank you. I love spending time with you too. So just briefly introduce yourself. Who is Serena? What do you do? And then we can get into the meat of it all.
So I'm Serena DAVIS. I'm half of Hippo Seeds. My business partner and I are leveraging our entrepreneurship background and venture capital experience and trying to do VC differently. You know, we've been looking at innovation as far as products all the time, and we're thinking that probably money needs to innovate as well. Not just, tech finance innovation, but VC as well. So this is what we're hoping to do by supporting other VCs to setting up our own VC, and finding like-minded people.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's beautiful. Just tell me a little bit about your journey. When did you start? How did you start? Why is the most important reason? Why did you start?
So I'm a product manager by trade, let's say. I started in venture capital in Austin, Texas. I have a diverse background in the sense that I was born in Germany, German mother, American father, finished my high school in South Korea. I've been a foreigner most of my life, so I sort of developed this intense love for humanity because as you travel, you understand that we're the same.
Yes.
And so
Connection.
I love absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So even in countries, I find myself often in countries where I don't speak the language. The 4 languages I speak do not cover very much of the planet. So you learn to connect. There's a smile, there's a gesture, there's a feeling that you get with people that allow you to connect no matter where you are. And I'm a product manager by trade. I've worked in telecoms, venture capital, supporting entrepreneurs, but have built my own products that have made millions. In Kenya, we raised 60 million for Wananchi as part of a team. And so just bringing that all together, but product management is really my passion. The thing is that usually it needs funding. So, my business partner and I, Zad, are willing to go ahead and roll up our sleeves and get the funding and then dive in and help entrepreneurs in scaling their ideas and things like this, which is super duper fun. Yeah. I love it. I feel like I've worked for years, if you know what I mean.
I know you love it. I know. So I'm new in the industry, but I have you as a guide, which is really, really amazing. But I think as we're learning, it's getting so important, as you rightfully mentioned when you were introducing yourself, that the VC world needs to change. The industry and the way that we're thinking about it needs to change. So in your view, as you've been doing what you were doing, what are some of the things that you've picked up that you think, could benefit from being innovated a little bit more, especially in how we're supporting small businesses as venture capital companies?
So early stage is a very unique time, right? So there's VC that funds growth and they come in at 20, 30 million, but there's already so much traction. that there's not a lot of risk unless you're just, you don't know what you're doing or the market tanks or something like this. Supporting someone who has the guts. I think entrepreneurs are the gutsiest people on the planet, right? And we know that females get funded so very little. And so as much as everybody is saying now, let's fund women, but how are we doing that? So are we going to their spaces to support them, or into our spaces to support? Are we understanding how we work differently? This is very important. And as far as how VC needs to change, look, I'm all for unicorn hunting. Please go ahead, do this. That is a very small group of people. And if every single VC is trying to raise money by saying we're unicorn hunters, then which is the 4% of the market, then where's the other 96%? So let's say 5% of the market or 10% of the market isn't viable because it belongs more in potentially a philanthropic area. That still leaves you with, let's do the math, it's still about 80% of the market that needs an appetite and a different approach. So where's the support for that?
Where is the support for that? And how does VCs then, how do they realistically start supporting? Because we've moved to a spot where it was actually very amazing that so many companies are wanting to support businesses grow, but then we quickly shifted back to making money. How can I make the quickest money and the quickest buck, which has led to these unicorn huntings. And just for everybody listening, could you please just give a brief description of what a unicorn is in this context?
So it's when your company has a valuation, and a valuation is different than revenue. Everybody thinks, wow. But the minute someone values you at $1 billion, you're a unicorn. Not revenue, valuation. Which is perception. So a lot of it has to do with, okay, if you get a 500 million investment or 200 million investment, and they value it based on, future estimations of potential earning, you can come to a valuation of $1 billion. It is not, however, revenue.
Yeah, it is perception, and I think it's actually very important for people to note that, right? Because if you think about it, then the women-owned businesses that we want to fund, who is then having the perception that they are worth $1 billion? Because the thing on everyone's mind is tech. So unless you're showing me something that's tech, that's going to be quick and people are going to grab it quickly, then you don't see the value of that all. And I know you've done extensive traveling within Africa, helping a lot of businesses around there. I think in your view, if you could just maybe give us one story that shows true value, that we need to start be looking at the human and the business, and then being able to show that value. And I know you've got a lot of stories, but just like I always love the old the mama, the village lady.
Okay, I'll tell that story. So with this Kenyan woman who I admire greatly, Jerry Rionge, we were looking at starting a fund and going around and understanding how things were growing, understanding very strong believers in grassroots, right? So it can't always be a pitch deck. We're traveling in the village up country in Kenya, they say, traveling in up country. And there's this, as you said, there's this mama, and we're walking the streets with her, and it's clear the respect she has. It's clear the respect she has. And she's telling us, look, farmers, small farmers are losing so much of their crop and revenue because there isn't cold storage. There isn't just a way to cold storage it. So she was saying, she took us to the plots. I have permission to have this area. I just want to create a cold storage, which with elevation in Kenya doesn't really require a lot of refrigeration. It's just a matter of building it correctly. And I will pay you back. And it was a simple little $7,000 investment to get it going. It wasn't a lot of money, right? Now, where's the risk? Where's the pitch deck? Where's the business plan? I'm not going to ask this woman to write a business plan, right? I look around and I see how everyone is reacting to her. And it's like, okay, this woman knows what she's doing. And somebody who can raise a family on very little money is usually very good at budgeting, super good at budgeting. So, this was a no-brainer. I have another a story I love in Mali, an entrepreneur, a female entrepreneur, who is making briquettes from agro byproducts. And their business was growing, cash flow positive, just needed 100,000 investment in order to expand the business. Was unable to get funding from banks because the banking system there is not so mature. All sorts of reasons that they couldn't get. Now, is this going to be a unicorn? No. Is the cash flow there so that it's absolutely, this is a no-brainer as well? Yes. I was very keen to even license the formula of the briquette, because in that project, I learned that more people died in Africa from asphyxiation than from HCV. And this briquette has no smoke that can cause that. So there's so many good things about this. That 100,000 at the time, I mean, this is my frustration in not having a fund. I can advise entrepreneurs only so far. And then it's
out backing them financially, then it becomes a problem, right? And I think that was one of the drives we had with Yolisa to start the fund here, because we've got so many women-owned businesses, and I think it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me. I mean, we were speaking to a person who was an IFC. They were backing women in business. And they were saying that it's actually quite amazing, because even in the banks, they've noted that women pay off their debt, like 100%. All of the time, women will pay off their debt without fail. But men don't always pay off their debt. But we are still marked as higher risk in the banking system, which then, and then you sit here and you're like, guys, when is this going to shift? Because for me, there needs to be a balance, right, Serena? As much as we're saying we need to fund these women, we need to fund the mamas who walk around and instantly if you fund her, the community is going to be sorted. Instantly, this, we obviously need to be thinking about the VCs as well, because they need to make the money. And for me, I always find that there's a balance to all of this if we just think about it realistically. And so the challenge is on us, because now we're like, okay, you're not going to fund them, we will fund these women. Yes. Then the onus is on us. And I think for me, as we're doing this, it's some of the things that we need to think about. How do we disrupt the industry? So I don't know if you've ever thought about it. How do we... Yes. What are some of the things we should be doing that would actually help and disrupt the industry?
So there are a lot of great ideas. You and I have discussed some of them. We've enjoyed that conversation immensely. At the end of the day, one of the LPs or the limited partners, investor, let's say, has to take the jump towards this new model. And I think the timing is coming once they become more confident as well. So what about in banking, you say, I want 6% of my money, but you're sticking people to this monthly payment. In markets, especially in entrepreneurship, where that may not happen, right? Mm-hmm. So is the innovation can also be on the banking side, where it says, okay, we can set it up kind of as a loan structure, but how does cash flow work? Why are we establishing a loan based on these old traditional sort of established, Western models, when people are earning money every week? What if you had an average cash flow over the month, instead of saying you have to gather the money on this day? What if you could, bless you, if you could, do a little bit of cash every once in a while and have some kind of average? What about leveraging the community aspect? I noticed in Kenya and also in South Africa, communities come together. What if several people are on that loan, or several people are making the cash flow? I think the mentality is there. I don't think that banking products should necessarily just be copy paste, right? Now, on a VC side, how much is enough? My favorite question. How much is enough? What if it's 1.5x? So in VC, if you do a pitch deck, you're promising unicorns, you're like, oh, 7x, 10x. By the way, there is no legal obligation. Mm-hmm. I can have a fund and completely blow all the money, and I'm not going to jail. So what happens if I raise and I said, look, unicorn hunters, bravo, you belong over there, great for you. Yes. I want to focus on small women, small businesses, women run, grassroots. Tenacity is the number one characteristic needed by an entrepreneur. You cannot describe a better tenacious person than women. Yeah. So how much is enough? What if we say 1.2x over a certain amount of years, or 1.5x, and once that's been paid back, it's done? Yeah. Or just set expectations less. Let's say we target 1.5 to 2x instead of 5 or 7x. Why not? Why not? How much is enough? We're giving you your money back. You're getting more than interest rate at a bank. So how much is enough?
Exactly. And I think maybe the mindset shift needs to happen in stopping, the whole thing about the venture capital. It's like, it's so clinical and so process driven. It's like, I'm giving you capital, you need to pay me back, which I get and I appreciate, And you know that we always speak about the fact that you don't want people getting used to freebies, hand-me-downs, but how do we start working realistically to really empower people and not just saying that we're empowering? And I love the model that you're speaking about, because if you think about agriculture, for instance, in a small community, they could come together and say, okay, for these 5 women, you loan them this money and they will actually pay it back as a group versus as an individual. And we're not looking at things like that. And I think, again, as venture builders, so in Imizizi Evolution, for instance, as a venture builder, would also be looking at the supporting and the acceleration of the business as well as the funding, which I feel like is very important for that handover and that advisory bit to be involved over and above the funding. And I don't know, how do you think a VC would realistically be able to stretch itself out so that it focuses on the businesses that need the grassroots, the women, the people who are actually taking care of the necessities, which we will need in the future. I don't know why we're not thinking about this. For me, it's just like, if I am supporting a business, tech enabling it, because tech is the big thing. I can tech enable agriculture, but that means that there's continuous food. There's a supply of food, and we're not struggling with this. So I'm not sure why I can't value this as a unicorn if I find it, and I think it would be amazing.
So your country is spending a lot of money on capacity building, on training programs. It's beautiful. It's great. Some of these KPIs probably need to be discussed because there's so much fulfillment of KPIs rather than delivering mission. I think what's exciting in this capacity building, though, is, okay, with all these KPIs and facing and chasing those KPIs, of which I've seen from some of these training groups, is that there needs to be a discussion between, what's realistic as a KPI. But, I digress a little bit. I think accelerators, I think what Imizizi is doing is fantastic. These people, you work with these people, you see how they're reacting to feedback. How better to do due diligence than during this capacity building? I mean, as a VC, traditional VC, that's worth gold. Now, what if we do it even better? If you are the one who's going to then invest and your income is based on that, you are now looking at training also very, very differently, right? Now it's not just, let's do the training, let's fulfill these KPIs, let me bring in the money. Now it's, hey, I really want to do this longer term investment. Of course, capacity building for 20, not everybody should be an entrepreneur. I do think working in a small company, even if you go and you get training and you say, hey, I'm not really the leader for that, but I love this environment, let me go work with another team, that's worth gold too, right? So I think that you and other accelerators are perfect to have a fund behind you and just be and capacity building for you in being a fund manager. Now, I'm not giving you 50 million tomorrow, but what about 2 million, 3 million, something like this? Let's start this out. There's so much development money. Let's experiment. Let's do this. Let's just do this.
I love that, right? Because I think one of the things, maybe I'm talking as I get very excited in the energy, because I think one of the things then as VCs that they should be doing is that over the years, you've done your lessons learned. how do we then feed back this information back to businesses? Like you were mentioning about the mama in Kenya. She's not going to do a pitch deck. She's not going to do a business plan. She understands business intuitively. She's a leader naturally, So how does then the incubators and the accelerators help her with the papers? Because that's all that matters. It's how do I look on paper?
A Lego house. What Legos are needed? And that's the thing too, when you're partnering. So my favorite part about being an angel investor when I work in VC is partnering. I get excited with the milestones that the teams make, So, it's a Lego house. You can come in, you can have 3 brilliant engineers that just graduate university. You think they know marketing, you think they know accounting. Of course not. So going back though so it's, even if you're unicorn hunting, you're still building a Lego house that has pieces missing. And as an early stage VC, you have to be able to assess that. And if you come in a partnering way and you forge sort of an open conversation that I find happens naturally between women, we're always underestimating ourselves. We're always saying, I can't do that, when it's like, well, but you just did it 10 times.
Yeah.
Now we're putting a slide title to it, and now you're nervous. So that's also something unique for us.
That's so true, because someone actually mentioned something as well. Women are over mentored, over coached, but we're underfunded, and that's mostly because men do this much, and they do this much and talk about this much. And women generally do this much and talk about this much because of the confidence. I need to prove, I need to make sure, I've backed it and I've done it 10,000 times before I can tell you that I've done it right, which already is a beautiful quality. I feel like, should be honored and should be thought about. Sorry, I'm just thinking some of the things that we had been discussing even before. You keep mentioning the importance of an entrepreneur, the type of entrepreneur that you're looking at. And as you've been in the business for a while, in the industry for a while, how do you, because I have this idea that the business has a path, and so must the business owner match the business's path, the growth path. So how do we realistically then, do these things in the VC and give this confidence that, especially as women, we are lacking?
So, knowing you a little while, you're doing this all the time already, kind of. When Imizizi is selling services, you're kind of doing that, right? You're saying, I'm going to take this and I'm going to create that. I'm going to do capacity building. I can find you the right person. Yeah. I can see what's needed. I can support you. You have done in your projects where you've gone into companies and helped them map out what needs. So you've done this Lego house building already. Yeah. And all that's missing now is this new vocabulary and this sort of new accounting that's going on. So this is, it's the same question for you. I think it's just that little extra bit. So when you have someone that, we talk about this all the time when we talk about, evaluation criteria. And the first thing we always agree with is mindset, right? Mindset. Tenacity and mindset. You somebody with kind of a half idea, or it's going to hang in there longer than somebody who, gives up right away. Yeah. This is who can't handle that perseverance. And
sorry, continue.
No, you're all of your experience that you've had in the company positions you for that type of evaluation.
Mm-hmm. So in your journey, can you give me like a story of when you've seen a shift in persona that was required for a business owner from when they started, or when you started with them, and as they were growing? What are some of the things that they did? I know you mentioned to one of the ladies that they really need to start taking time for themselves, to be able to balance themselves properly with the business. what are some of the things and the characteristics you've seen in the shift with these women from when they start and then as you are helping them out as they grow?
So I have two examples. One was a young female entrepreneur doing amazing, raised money, so sharp, so clever, got the team to 12 people. So in scaling, you have sort of milestones, 10 people, 50, 100, and then, and had crossed this 10-person threshold, which is amazing job. And I noticed that her hair was falling out. And I'm like, this isn't good. So I'd been supporting with product development roadmaps, and I was like, we need to schedule you mental health. So we scheduled in Wednesday night for movies, got a private trainer. I drive a motorcycle. I took her on my motorcycle for an hour along this
Motorcycle.
I use it for psychotherapy myself, and just that little bit of break, that little bit of giving ourselves a break helped with this. And in taking care of entrepreneurs, it has to also be the human, of course. In another example, had to when you have a startup, and I'm sure you and Yolisa went through the same thing, where you're doing so much yourself, and then you have each other. But if you're a solo female founder, to have someone come to you and say, look, you need to start leading and delegating. Yeah. This sort of scaling also needs to happen. And that often can be giving yourself permission to step back, trusting that it's going to happen, putting in different oversight in order to say, okay, it's a Friday meeting and they're not going to do it exactly the way you do it, but they are going to get it done and they are going to get better at it. So this is the other thing too, often, is to scale a CEO, to say, okay, you can delegate now. Handle the strategy, the strategic mind, because the founder who really brings the company forward knows the product better than anybody. They are the perfect ones to do strategy. And so if you have a good VC or a good investor that's partnering, to sort of just flag, like, we've reached that point. Now's the time for you to scale yourself up. And those are the conversations that I find are easier with women. I'm going to get in trouble for this because we're recording, but they naturally happen sort of much easier, with less defensiveness, with like, it's next step. I've been in a company that actually got to the 10 million investment, and it was like, okay, you need to bring in an operations person who is really, good at setting up processes and procedures and doing that kind of thing, and how to set up a warehouse. And you as the CEO, again, the product itself. You're the one who should be going out doing the PR. You should be in the news, in the newspapers, evangelizing, recruiting new talents, this type of role. So sometimes in scaling a company, we can mistake the fact that someone else has to come in and take a bulk of our work. That sort of transition needs to be handled delicately.
Yeah. That's so important, right? Because especially if you feel like it's your baby, and then someone says who's technically advising you from externally, and you would think that they have ulterior motives because they've put in money, but there needs to be that shift in thinking that what you were doing when you started the business and you were by yourself is not the thing that you need to be doing for you to be able to scale the business, and that shift in who I am when I started the business versus who I need to be to grow the business. And I think for me, the other question I was going to ask you, which you've led into it very well, would be the relationship between VCs and the small businesses and how it's growing in the years that are coming. I'll let you answer that. But from what I've gotten so far, from my lens, looking at what you do, is the involvement and the human aspect. It's understanding the business and understanding the person as well, because then you can sort of match the two. Like the lady whose hair was falling out, probably some of the work aspect was, she was dropping it. Not a lot of stuff was happening because she was stressed. And once you made that relationship, that relation and that link, and I think for me, those are some of the things you need to think about in the VC of the future. How do you get people who actually understand the human as well as the business?
I don't know, is that a question? Because I think that's a fantastic philosophy right there. That's just, you said it. Uh, Again, early stage is so different. Early stage is so different. Maybe somebody wants an investor that's completely hand off. The truth, though, is that if it's your first time, even if it's your second or third time, having somebody to help, to not feel alone, because entrepreneurship can be quite lonely. So early in my career, I had a boss who told me, if you sink without asking for help, it's your fault. But if you ask me for help, then we sink together. Then it's us together. And if you create that relationship, most companies fail. Why? Product market match. Okay, that would probably already have been decided when they reach you. The other, though, is simple operational things like cash flow or other things that can be easily taught. If the market doesn't want the product, okay, out of luck. But to fail for simple things that somebody else has the knowledge of and has the experience of, that's just a pity. That's a pity to fail for that reason.
That, oh, I mean, that hit me, right? The first bit that if you fail alone, if you drown alone, if you sink, if you sink without asking, that's your fault. And I think that, again, that mind shift, that responsibility and accountability needs to be so important, because I need to have asked. And I think for me, then the VCs need to be very clear on how do we support. And I think that's why for today's conversation was, how do we become better anchors for businesses? Because sometimes businesses don't even know what to ask for. They don't know what they don't know. So, and I think for me, then the relationship between the VC and the small business and how it evolves in supporting them needs to shift as well. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Not a final question, but leading towards the final question. I know you mentioned why you love this and how you got into it, but what are some of the things that, every day you're just like, it might irk you, but, it's the reason why you will always continue being in the space?
I read a lot of new ideas, and seeing new ideas, we're like, wow, that's so clever. I love that. I love when someone I'm working with reaches that next level, or they reach a personal milestone, and you see that just absolute joy in their eye, or that is just absolutely the most fulfilling thing. Is, and people will say, wow, it's competition, competition, competition. Yes, maybe for unicorns, I don't know. I think there's a lot out there and a lot to be done, and especially in Africa. I think Africa doesn't need Nestle, doesn't need all these others, has plenty to do, has a lot of so much talent, so and so much to be able to do. Why now's the time to do it, internally, and create indigenous wealth and create that independence. And I'm excited and honored to be invited into a lot of these journeys. It's so much fun.
So much fun. It's so much fun. And just as a closing, what are some of the tips you would give to small businesses who are looking to be funded or are looking to scale? Either way.
Finding the right partner is important. It's a constant education. There's so much information out there, so it's really important to find the people that you trust for that information. So it's, instead of, one of my favorite entrepreneurs here in Greece, she was telling me she never gets tired. She never gets tired. It's one more thing to learn, one more thing to learn. And I'm like, how do you do that? I've never met an entrepreneur who wasn't sort of at some point tired or overwhelmed with that. Yeah. And she's like, it's like a video game. This is like a video game to me. I'm earning more badges. I've got more things. I've learned the next thing. And she just looks at it as gamifications.
No way.
Yes. Yes. So I think this is the biggest thing, is to look at it that way. And it says, fail quickly, things like this, but it's more focused on solving problems, everyone's going to trip up. Everybody's going to trip up. If you're spending time feeling like a failure, this is not good for your biochemistry because it sends cortisol and bad things through you. And honestly, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
Solve the problem. Somebody knows it. If it's time, if you find out you're not an entrepreneur, that's okay too, right? There's a way to. I've helped businesses close down. In VC, the thing that's nice about VC compared to a bank, banks can't allow failure. VC is set up to allow a certain amount of failure. And so you can travel with the entrepreneur on a kind of a different journey, even at some point, if you have this
The mindset, yes. And that's why it's not that's actually a very beautiful way of actually even thinking about it, because you're right. Failure is seen as such it's detrimental, it's bad. But I find that in the failings I've had, I've learned a lot more if you actually just take the time to learn what you need to learn. That's actually a very beautiful thing.
which doesn't mean you shouldn't cry and you shouldn't be stressed. I'm not saying that at all.
Exactly.
I'm just saying, don't beat yourself up, and spend time learning. Now, a bottle of wine with good friends is my favorite, another favorite psychotherapy. One of my longest friends, best friends, she tells me, Serena, I think you're perfect. You could have done that more perfectly. And I'm like, so you're telling me I was wrong? Well, so we have people who are, gently nudge us along, or a little bit of, but in a certain way. If we're handling ourselves with ethics and integrity, this is the thing. We're used to, community is just so important, right? So lift and rise, raise ourselves, lift as you're going. I We know there's enough resources for us. We're not all going to live in a mansion. I think that's a lot of floors to mop, personally. I don't know, but I just there's it's collaboration, really collaboration. Here in Greece, a young woman that I admire, who at 25 inherited a farm, was just 10 years later doing it her way, understanding to be absolutely dedicated to the farmers, to the land, to questioning everything.
Yeah.
Has now nominated for an Earthshot award, not Moonshot, Earthshot, because we need to be on the Earth, right? We need to fix this planet we're on.
Yes.
And humans are a very valuable part of it. You can't talk about soil regeneration without talking about human regeneration.
And that's why for me it just makes sense to actually back, the essential services. How do we start looking at advancing agriculture so that, there's less pesticides, there's less chemicals being used, but you're still, supporting and empowering women to actually grow and feed and create this whole ecosystem and life cycle that would then generate around that. And I think for me that's the focus. If we could start shifting our focus is on, we are here, we're people, and we're on Earth, and we need to save this place. I was going to ask you so many more questions that were just popping up in my head, but I do know that we've run out of time. And I want to thank you so much, Serena, for the time that you've given us, and for the beautiful pearls of wisdom. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure, such a pleasure.
All right, we'll catch you next time.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.